sounding the alarm. Boston firefighters putting their lives on the line.
It's an epidemic.
Long after the fires are out.
We had 8 diagnoses in the month of May.
Cancer sending our firefighters to an early grave.
It's like wandering in my necks.
And there's a new diagnosis every 3 weeks.
There's nothing I love more than being a fireman.
Tonight, these heroes take us on their unimaginable journey.
All I want to do is live, beat this, be able to walk my daughters down the aisle. How is this for you?
It's a lot. But I just deal with it.
Now, a new mission.
There's a fight that needs to be fought. And my girls and I want to fight it.
Protect those who protect us.
This job is everything to me. It's the only thing I've ever wanted. Nothing can keep me out of here. Nothing can keep these guys out of here.
Tonight, a Boston 25 News special. Boston's Bravest, facing a hidden killer. Here's Boston 25 News anchor Blair Miller.
Good evening. Tonight we report from the heart of Boston, here along Boylston Street. This is one of the busiest firehouses in the city, home to Engine 33 and Ladder 15. The Boston Fire Department was the first paid fire department in this country, started in 1678. However, no one in the fire service ever expected to face what it's facing today, and that's the grave risk of cancer. And it's touching all walks of life, young, old, seasoned firefighters, and it's killing them at an alarming rate. The Boston Fire Commissioner says it has reached an epidemic level here in this city. Since 1990, more than 190 Boston firefighters have died from occupational cancer. And he says it's a number that's only continuing to grow. We've spent the last 4 months looking into this one issue, and tonight we will take you beyond the startling numbers and show you why it's happening and why it's happening to the men and women who keep us safe. Every day, all across this city, the call for help is often met by the men and women of the Boston Fire Department. And every day, that call goes out more than 200 times across Boston. It's often the unknown they're headed to,
answering engine 7,
where the outcome can be catastrophic. The last time the Boston Fire Department lost one of their own in the line of duty was March 26, 2014, a day that rocked the city to its core.
Report on the box, we got a 4-story brick residential. Fire is in the basement.
It was 2:42 in the afternoon when firefighters responded to this 4-story brownstone in Back Bay.
Listen, make sure you run your cameras through that building. I don't want the fire to sneak up behind you.
The fire had consumed the building, fueled by the high winds. Lieutenant Edward Walsh and firefighter Michael Kennedy were two of the first firefighters to arrive that day, what eventually turned into a 9-alarm fire.
All companies get out of the building.
Walsh and Kennedy fighting the fire from the bottom of the building. The flames just too much. Walsh, 43 years old, and Kennedy, 33. Both of them were killed doing what they loved.
Here the heart is big as all outdoors.
He was clearly put on this earth as a guardian of others.
Plenty of people have heard about that tragedy in Back Bay and the stories of two heroes who lost their lives that day.
He was a born leader who did not regard himself as a hero.
You know, he walked in a room and he lit it up. His smile, his personality was infectious.
But in that same year, 4 Boston firefighters died from occupational cancer that was attributed to their job as firefighters. No one has heard their stories until now.
It's an epidemic. It's taken a devastating toll on the department. We have a significant number of members who are suffering through some significant stages of cancer.
Boston Fire Commissioner Joe Finn is a true fireman at heart. He joined in 1984 and has climbed the ranks ever since. But along the way, he's seen co-workers and friends fall in a way that's nothing short of heartbreaking. Here on this wall at Boston Fire Headquarters, time stands still. Each picture, each face, is of a man who lost his life to occupational cancer.
I can say honestly, I can say I know everybody on that wall.
Commissioner Finn estimates that someone in the Boston Fire Department is diagnosed with cancer every 3 weeks. In fact, the day before I sat down with him for this interview, a firefighter had just come to his office with a new diagnosis.
A member came up to see me to tell me that he was recently diagnosed the day before with advanced prostate cancer.
And then there was last May, which was especially harsh.
We had 8 diagnoses in the month of May. And that was really probably the biggest impact for numbers that I've seen since I've been here.
When did you realize there's a serious issue here in Boston with this?
I would say it goes back a number of years. We were, back in 2008, I lost a good friend, John Kenny. He was a captain up in Engine 24 to a brain tumor. And he was a young man in his mid-40s. He went to a couple significant fires where we started to see trends of people who were at certain houses or at certain events starting to develop these cancers after a number of years. And so John was one who kind of brought everything to the forefront for a lot of us.
One of those fires here in the South Boston neighborhood in October of 2002. A major fire erupted and roared through this power plant. Oil and smoke fell down on the firefighters. They were coated. And those hazards couldn't be washed away. Now, more than a decade later, the impact is devastating. Of the 200 firefighters who answered the call that day, 50 have cancer, cardiac or lung disease, and 16 have died from cancer. Slow and agonizing deaths that Commissioner Finn links to that day.
15 years later, and we're starting to see the significant impact that one fire had on the department.
It's crazy.
It is. It's crazy, but that's one fire.
Finn says it's even bigger than that one fire. Today's building materials and furnishings in homes and businesses are playing a huge role. Many in the fire service believe that plastics and flame retardant are only raising the risk for firefighters who are headed to the unknown. The Underwriters Laboratories in Chicago gave Boston 25 News this video. It's a demonstration they put together that shows what firefighters face now compared to 30 or 40 years ago. The room on the left includes items made with real wood and many natural materials. On the right, it's more modern. The curtain, the couch, even the coffee table are made with synthetic fibers. Both rooms were set on fire. The more modern room on the right was quickly devoured by the flames. In just 3 minutes, the fire was shooting through the roof. On the left, the older room withstood the heat, fire, and smoke much longer. At 15 minutes, it was still together. It took 30 minutes for this room to burn. Commissioner Finn is concerned about the building materials of today versus yesterday, but he believes changing it is almost impossible.
Realistically, I don't think there's much that can be done there. What we need to be focused on as a fire service is we need to be focused on better protection, better practices and protocols on the fire ground, tactically how we protect members. We're going to start thinking about how best we protect firefighters from these exposures.
On the outside, Commissioner Finn is working on how to fix it for the more than 1,500 men and women who work here at the Boston Fire Department. But on the inside, it strikes at the core of who he is and says it's been the worst kind of pain.
I can't begin to imagine what it's like sitting in your office hearing this over and over and over.
I'd be lying to you if I told you it doesn't take a toll on you emotionally. When you see members of the department that you work with, you know, their families, and you see them facing these battles, it becomes personal. Every member's aware of this. People all know somebody who's battling something and wondering if they're going to be next.
And that is a true concern here. Tonight, we'll take you behind those concerns. Also, what's being done to save the lives of those who save us? These are real people fighting for their lives, and you're about to see it in a way you've never seen before. Their journey is hard, emotional, and heartbreaking.
There's nothing I love more than being a fireman. Glenn, you have cancer. They're all having a hard time, but there's smiles on their face still, and like when your 5-year-old comes up to you and says, "Dad, I don't want you to have cancer anymore. When's your cancer going to be done?"
All I want to do is live, beat this.
And later, hope for the future.
There is no silver bullet to this issue. I think the next generation and the changes we make, even the younger generation, the guys who have less than 10 years in the job, we can make a difference in their lives.
When Boston's bravest, facing a hidden killer, returns.
want to get back to work, be a fireman again, and, you know, get back with my crew and my guys. And
For many firefighters and their families, it's a painful journey, which at times has little hope. We've reported on the tragic number of firefighters here in Boston who've died because of cancer. But we wanted to tell this story in a way that's more than just shocking numbers. For months, we have followed that journey for one local family and have witnessed their uncomfortable reality. For Glenn Preston, it seemed as if life couldn't get any better.
There's nothing I love more than being a fireman.
He was living his passion, fighting fires and saving people in the city he loves. And life got even better when a new love entered his life, Eva. They married and started a family. For Glenn Preston, everything was going right. It was the summer of 2016, working on Engine Company 39 in Dorchester, when life started to change.
I was just not myself. I was running out of energy.
He remembers the summer day when he and his crew were responding to fire after fire. Most firefighters relish in that. But on this day, Glenn couldn't keep up.
I was gasped for air. I couldn't breathe. I was just like dying before I even got to the seat of the fire inside, like dead. Could hardly even speak. I was so winded. And then it was a real hot day, but you blow it off. Like, oh, it's the heat. It's all this bunker gear we're wearing.
It wasn't the heat. It wasn't the bunker gear he was wearing. Whatever it was getting worse that day.
Smoky fire. You couldn't see a hand in front of your face or nothing. I was breathing wicked heavy. Like, and I'm just like wicked fast. Like, so someone came over and felt me. Like, who is that? And I told them who it was. And they're like, are you all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I don't know, I just can't breathe.
Glenn wasn't all right. What he thought might be a broken rib turned into a trip to the hospital.
I'm there for 3 or 4 hours, CAT scans, x-rays. And then I see like 6, 7, 8 doctors around me, all circled around. And they explain, like, there's a mass. There's a mass in your chest. Like, a mass? What do you mean there's a mass? And they're showing me on all these images and stuff. And come to find out, there was a mass, size of like a grapefruit or a softball between my right lung and my heart.
The doctors wanted to remove it to see if it was cancerous. He remembers the day he got the phone call from his doctor with the results. Glenn was on his way to Fenway Park, taking his 10-year-old son, Jake, with him. With his son in the back seat, he took the phone call, but tried desperately to keep his son from catching on.
This is the first time I'm actually told I got cancer, and it's bad. So I'm trying to talk to her like, hey, what's up, you know? Good, hey, all right. She's like, Glenn, you have cancer. This is the kind you have. It's very severe. You need to get treatment immediately. And it's like, okay, good, you know? What else is up? So I want him to think I'm talking to my buddies. I think I did a pretty good job. He's just in the back, listening to music.
Glenn hung up and kept driving. Despite his doctors telling him to come to the hospital that night, he and Jake continued on to that Red Sox game.
I had a smile on my face the whole time, and I'm kind of thinking, this might be my last time I ever get to bring my kid to a game. Ever. You know? Ever.
After that weekend, Glenn was in the hospital, and ever since, he's been in and out of the hospital, chemo and radiation countless times.
And again, sorry for the panting. I just can't breathe with the chemo.
On this day that I first sat down with the 41-year-old, he was just hours from going back to the hospital, this time to stay for at least a month, to undergo high-dose chemo and a bone marrow transplant to help fight off the 2 types of blood cancer he has, leukemia and lymphoma, causing tumors in his body.
I feel good. I'm tired. Starting to get a little tired.
This was in early December. Not knowing what his future held, Glenn had bought his kids stocking stuffers, as he put it, just in case. That's been the hardest part of his fight, doing it with his kids, watching every bit of it.
It's difficult to explain to your little 5-year-old that you're not going to be home for a month, or your 7-year-old that you're missing a birthday again. One of them they're all having a hard time, but there's smiles on their face still, and you know, like when your 5-year-old comes up to you and says, Dad, I don't want you to have cancer anymore. When's your cancer going to be done? Well, I wonder what goes through their mind when they're thinking this. And she cries because she doesn't want me gone for 30 days.
He's always told his doctors he didn't want to be told how serious the cancer was.
You know, I said straight up, I said, I don't want to know how long I have to live. That's up to me and God. And I don't really care what stage it is, so we don't need to talk about that.
And doctors have followed that?
Yeah, we just do our thing. Sometimes you can tell by the look in their eye. They look at you when they wish you good luck, and they're like, oh, you're screwed.
By his side, for the good, the bad, and the painful, has been his wife, Eva. They met back in 2002 in a chance encounter at a coffee shop in Boston.
And he had said, I really like you, and I would like to take you out for dinner.
A little more than a year later, the two married and went on to have 4 kids.
He was my hero.
Now, years later, they're living a life no one could prepare for.
Okay, ready? Look at me.
How is this for you?
It's a lot.
Show your father.
But I just deal with it. I just worry, I think, a little bit more, because it's like if I've been through this much already, I just think of my kids now. Like, I worry for my kids constantly.
With 4 kids, all under the age of 10, for any family, that's a challenge.
Good news, hon. What pills?
But one where their father is battling serious cancer, it's almost unimaginable, unless it's your family.
Video me.
The kids are remarkably strong. For their dad, their hero. 10-year-old Jake said one of his favorite things to do with his dad is go to the Red Sox game. It's a chance for both to focus on each other and not on his dad's health, which Jake admits is pretty hard.
I don't really like it because, like, it's just, like, hard kind of, like, to see him, like, so sad and stuff like that. Like, he can't, like, move around and he can't do, like, certain things, and yeah.
Daddy?
8-year-old Sage understands her father's battle, but focuses more on what she likes to do with him. That's dancing.
Cowboy and cowgirl dance when we dance and do, like, stuff. That's fun.
Is that like a father-daughter dance?
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah.
Why do you like that so much?
Because I get to introduce my dad.
Yeah.
We visited with Glenn again after he returned to the hospital for his high-dose chemo. Because he was so susceptible to infection, we had to wear masks and gloves. Surrounded by words of love, pictures from his kids, and goals to get stronger, Glenn fought back any pain.
How are you feeling?
I'm good.
No, really, how are you feeling?
I'm still a little tired. I want to get out of here, but I'm good.
There has been pain, but doctors say he's responded extremely well to the bone marrow transplant and chemo. Only time will tell how well. He's been at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute for weeks, and his motivation to leave is uncomfortably honest.
All I want to do is live, beat this, be able to walk my daughters down the aisle, not be in a box. You know, I want to get back to work, be a fireman again, and, you know, get back with my crew and my guys, and be able to go to my kids' like baseball games and my daughter's dance recitals, and go to the open houses at their school, which I can't go to now for months and months. I'm going to be on quarantine for months.
We've spent months tracking Glenn's progress. When we come back, an update on how he's doing now and the support surrounding him and his family to win.
We did it! We did it!
I think it helps people to understand that, like, you never are alone.
And later,
I mean, was cancer even an issue when you came on with the agency?
I mean, when we signed up for the job, we signed up to help the citizens of Boston. And you never knew this kind of risk was there.
You're watching Boston's Bravest, facing a hidden killer. Here again, Boston 25 News anchor Blair Miller.
The Boston Fire Commissioner estimates there's a new cancer diagnosis here in the Boston Fire Department once every 3 weeks. A few minutes ago, we showed you Glenn Preston's battle. But he isn't fighting alone, not by a long shot. Beyond the weights, the sweat, and loud music here at CrossFit Route 1 in Lynn, there's something much deeper happening.
Go! 22, I'll take it. Nice job.
And it revolves around Boston firefighter Glenn Preston, who's fighting 2 blood cancers, leukemia and lymphoma, linked to his career as a firefighter.
If I say lower, you know that you're capable of more.
Katie Boschko is one of the CrossFit instructors here. Glenn's wife, Eva, has been coming here for Katie's classes.
Let it be here, right on your chin. Don't let it pull you forward. You got this. She always comes in here and gives 150%.
So when Katie heard what was happening, a few local gyms raised money, but there was still the urge to do more.
So I kind of just threw out there on Facebook that for every $1 donated, I would do a burpee in my weight vest.
She thought it would be a couple hundred. It turned into so much more.
It was just over $5,200.
$5,200 for 5,200 burpees wearing a Kevlar vest. She spent weeks doing them, and we were there the day she finished the final 100.
Like, I would do more if I had to. It's awesome. It's his shirt, you know? And like, a couple times I want to like wipe my sweat with it, right? Because that's what it's there for. But then I look at him like, he doesn't get a break. Like, he doesn't get to like wipe his sweat.
And right after that, Katie saw Glenn's wife, Eva.
We did it! We did it!
Thank you so much, Katie, for doing Thank you, Mama. It means a lot.
For a moment, the two celebrated. But then Eva revealed a setback. Glenn's abdomen had ruptured that day, sending him to emergency surgery.
I'm going after to see Glenn.
Okay, good.
But I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, please.
Glenn would be okay, and the next day he came home. Through it all, Katie and the others here are doing everything they can to help the Preston family, whether that's with donations or just providing a place full of optimism.
And to realize that we're here to be their crutches and their cast, and then, you know, maybe they don't need the crutches, maybe they just need a walking boot, or, you know, and we'll be there when they need us.
At home now, the fight for Glenn and Eva is up and down every day. Some days, Glenn is able to go outside, maybe even go to a restaurant, nothing more. Then there are days where Glenn stays in bed all day because he's still so tired from all the chemo. But together, they're fighting it.
I have to stand by Glenn. You know, we made a commitment to each other when we got married, and if I was going through this, I would want him to do the same for me.
So my goal is to get better and be the proper father and husband like I want to be, and like I used to try to be. And that especially, and I just want to be a fireman again. I just want to be a freaking fire guy.
We started following Glenn last year. I speak with him several times a week. Right now he's focused on April 5th. That's when he'll be rescanned to see how the chemo has impacted his cancer. Of course, we will all be watching and updating you. So we wanted to know how firefighters compare to the public when it comes to cancer, and it's almost hard to believe. Firefighters have a 9% higher risk of being diagnosed with cancer compared to the U.S. general population. Even worse, the risk of dying from it is 14% higher than the public.
Ahead on Boston's Bravest, a beloved husband, dad, and fire chief, and then the diagnosis they never expected.
Watching him go from what he was to the day he passed away was horrific.
Now turning this family's heartbreak into hope for future firefighters.
There's a fight that needs to be fought.
When Boston's Bravest, facing a hidden killer, returns. You're watching Boston's Bravest, facing a hidden killer.
He says, I probably have maybe 2 years. And I just kept saying, you don't know that. You know, let's hope.
Tonight we've shown you the direct impact that cancer is having here at the Boston Fire Department. BFD certainly isn't alone. While looking into this and hearing about the families fighting cancer, we came across one family's fight that ended in a way they never thought possible. The years feel almost like days for Sandra Arangio.
It feels like yesterday. It just doesn't seem real. It just seems so long ago, but it also seems like yesterday.
Looking back and going through the years of memories, she and her 3 daughters can't help but smile and laugh about their father and husband, Mario. At 21, he became a firefighter in Watertown. He eventually rose to the rank of fire chief. Sandra remembers the night he got the call that he was picked to lead the department.
You know, he hung up the phone and we just got very excited, started jumping up and down and screaming, and it was just awesome. It was a great feeling.
Sandra says her husband loved being a fireman, and she loved it too. She says she wasn't one to worry about him heading off every day into the unknown.
I mean, you just don't think about their job. You just, you know, you get up, you kiss them, and see you later on, and you go.
But in late 2016, something was off. Mario had stomach pain and was quick to get it checked.
If he didn't feel well, he went to the doctors. He wasn't one of those, oh, I'll put it off, I'm not going to go. He was really good about that.
It was October 31st, Halloween, when Mario went to the doctor. He came home that night, ready to take their grandchild trick-or-treating. But Mario had unsettling news.
And he said, can I talk to you for a second? I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want the good news or do you want the bad news? I said, honey, what's up? And he said, they found a mass. So they, he says, don't say anything to the girls. He said, let's just see what this is.
The mass was on his pancreas. They both knew the threat was real. Sandra believes it was Mario's exposure to years of toxic fires and chemicals that led to his mass. The morning after Halloween, Mario went to the hospital, and as Sandra puts it, that's when everything started.
At this point, were you hopeful that he could beat this?
Yes. I mean, we thought that we caught it early enough. We thought that he was going to be fine.
He instantly started chemotherapy. 9 months later, some good news. After 16 rounds of chemo, the tumor had gotten smaller.
They said, we're going to take 5 weeks off. After this 5 weeks, we're going to scan you again. And we waited. They made us wait 5 weeks. And we came back, and the scans were bad. His liver, the spots came back in 2 folds. I mean, and the spot in his pancreas was growing back. He just got sick very quickly.
How did he understand this?
He knew, right from the beginning. When he first got diagnosed, him and I went down the Cape, and we were talking about it, and he said, Sandra, he said, not too many people don't live from this. He says, I probably have maybe 2 years. And I just kept saying, you don't know that. Let's hope.
For Sandra, the cruel reality is how fast the cancer hit Mario. Once again, a result of the work he did as a firefighter.
Watching him go from what he was to the day he passed away was horrific. It's awful to watch your loved one sick, but to not watch him eat, to not watch, not to eat, not to drink, not to communicate. It's awful.
What do you remember most about some of your final talks together?
Just how much he loved us, how much every night we would all be in the room with them. We just sat with them and we just told him how much we loved him, and right to the end he would tell us he loved us.
The way you guys talk about your dad and to see him go through what he went through, how hard was that?
We just felt heartbroken to watch him go through that, to be in pain, to be suffering, to know that he's not going to have much time left with his wife, his family, his kids, his granddaughter, everything. It just was heartbreaking.
He was pretty with it right until the end, and that was really hard to just know that he knew.
It turned out Mario would only live for a year after being diagnosed. November of 2017, another community once again shattered. Now, just a few months after saying goodbye, Sandra and her 3 daughters are eager to share their story, as haunting as it may be, but it's their hope that other younger firefighters will listen and that other fire departments will do everything they can to save their own.
There just needs more awareness, training, funding, health insurance, scans. Whoever will listen to me, I'll talk to. There's a fight that needs to be fought. And my girls and I want to fight it.
Mario Arangio was the youngest chief ever in the history of the Watertown Fire Department, and his family says that should serve as a warning to everyone that cancer can hit at any age. Ahead tonight, we'll show you what's now being done on day one for the youngest recruits that could save their lives.
Every single one of us know the risks of cancer now. I don't know anybody who's actually resigned because of it.
They serve the city they love. How to protect them when Boston's Bravest returns. Here again, reporting from one of Boston's oldest firehouses, Boston 25 News anchor Blair Miller.
We've been telling you about the hazards these firefighters face every shift, and it goes far beyond the flames. It's their equipment, it's the toxins they're breathing in. A big part of all this has to do with the masks that they wear during a dangerous fire. And if you can imagine, there was a time when many firefighters didn't wear their masks. They wanted that smoky look on their face almost as a sign of bravery. That culture has changed. Recently, I sat down with a group of Boston firefighters for a frank discussion on what you don't see and what you don't hear.
When we talk about cancer in this agency, what comes to mind?
When?
Inevitable.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Who's next?
Well, I make it to retirement.
Keith, you've been with the agency the longest, right?
Yes. My thing is, like I said, is, you know, I don't want to be diagnosed with cancer and then I'm retiring and I got a year to live. You know, I want to live to see, you know, my grandkids.
But when you started, and you said it was 1993.
Yes.
To now, the change from when you first came on to now, I mean, was cancer even an issue when you came on with the agency?
No. No, it wasn't. We didn't know what I mean, when we signed up for the job, we signed up to help the citizens of Boston. And you never knew this kind of risk was there. You know, we didn't even think about, you know, cancer back then. But now when you start seeing all the firefighters on duty that's being diagnosed with this, it's like wondering, am I next?
You really do wonder that?
Yes.
Lieutenant, I saw you shaking your head. I saw you guys all shaking your head. But you've been in this firehouse the most of everybody here, right?
15 years.
And you've seen 3 firefighters in this house die from occupational cancer?
That have died, yes, but I can think of at least a handful others who have beat cancer, but have come down with it.
What do you make of that?
The scariest thing for me is not knowing what type of cancer to look for.
Billy.
Sir.
This probably has hit you and your family the hardest, literally.
Yep.
Your father worked in this firehouse.
House. Yep.
Same firehouse where you work?
Yes, sir.
He had occupational cancer?
Yes, sir.
How long ago was that?
16 years ago this month. A couple days. Be 16 years.
What's this like for you?
This is everything to me. This job is everything to me. It's the only thing I've ever wanted.
But I have to wonder, I mean, isn't it hard to walk in here knowing that your dad worked here doing something he loved so much, but it killed him?
It killed him. You're going to live with that. That's a choice I have to make, and my younger brother, who's a lieutenant on the job as well, has to make. Something that we've seen already. Seen my mother suffer, seen my brothers suffer. You know, watch my father die. Still want to be here. It's the only thing I want.
So, what do you do differently when you're going out on one of these trucks? You're on the ladder truck.
I am.
What do you do differently?
Just in the last few years, I've really been trying to wear my mask more.
And when I got on, a lot of guys, we didn't wear our mask. You know, it's like inhale the smoke, take it. If you breathe it, you breathe it. But we didn't know what we was breathing in. So now that we're getting diagnosed with this, it's like, wow, why couldn't I put my mask on back then?
But go back years. I think each one of you guys have said there's been a situation where you haven't had your mask on for whatever reason. It used to be fairly common.
Correct.
Why? There wasn't masks.
At one point.
Macho. And the more smoke you can take, the further in the building you could go to
get to people that other people couldn't get because maybe they couldn't take that much smoke. Or
badge of honor almost.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't put your mask on until you absolutely needed it. And the second you could take it off, you would take it off to be able to stay in the building and do your job for as long as you could.
Jose, I want to turn to you. You're the captain here, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you see one of these guys with their mask off fighting a fire, what do you do?
Well, immediately I told them to put it on. No question asked.
So now, when you don't have your mask on, then that's your fault now. Because now the rules is that you have to have your mask on.
It's not hard to prevent it. It's up to us to do the right thing and cover up and wear your equipment when you're supposed to.
Do you think the public gets this? Do you think they realize
No.
what's going on here?
No, not to the extent that we do. Not to the extent our families do.
What do your families or your spouses say about this?
You don't talk about it.
You don't talk about it?
Can't.
Why?
It's hard to talk about something that's, you know, seems to be inevitable, but and is a really horrible subject. You know, like what's there to talk about besides, you know, I'm sure they feel this way, like besides wanting you to quit.
Do you guys, at the end of the day, do you now feel safe?
Yes.
When I asked that question, I felt some hesitation, and maybe it's yes, you feel safe now.
Safer going forward.
Safer.
It might be a little too late for a lot of guys. I mean, going forward, safe, yes, but I'm sure, as me included, people that are still scared about whether you're safe, you know.
Put it this way, there's what, 1,500 guys on our job? Every single one of us know the risks of cancer now. I don't know anybody who's actually resigned because of it.
Those firefighters also told me there is a very real discussion happening on this topic at firehouses all across Boston, and much of that is focusing on the solutions.
And we're going to start thinking about how best we protect firefighters from these exposures.
Up next, new hope for the future. Boston's bravest, facing a hidden killer.
There's no silver bullet here.
Now making changes to protect those who protect us.
While working on these reports, many people have asked me why Boston seems to have more firefighters suffering from cancer than other agencies in other big cities. The commissioners told me this city took too long to respond. But now many changes are happening in an effort to save lives. From the outside, most firehouses in New England have that gritty, historic look. On the inside and behind every fire, changes are being made, largely due to the spike in cancer cases impacting firefighters. These are changes that could truly save lives. In the last few years, the city of Boston has thrown millions and millions of dollars into fixing this. After a serious fire, the firefighters' gear used to end up here, hanging on the wall, despite any of the toxic chemicals from the flames interwoven in the material. Firefighters would reuse the gear over and over. Researchers believe that would constantly expose firefighters to the risk of ingesting dangerous fumes or chemicals call after call. Now they have two sets of gear in Boston. If there's a bad fire, one set is washed and a backup set of gear is then used. Here in Chelsea, Engine 2 ranks in the top 5 busiest fire engines in the country per capita. They've made similar changes to help protect firefighters.
This is for the turnout gear?
Chelsea Deputy Fire Chief John Quantieri showed me the new washers and then took us downstairs. Here in this enclosed separate area, they put their gear to dry.
So you can see this is where everything gets hung up. Pants, the coat, the place for their hood, their gloves. We try to get as much of that contaminant off their gear as soon and quickly as possible.
Last year, the city of Boston spent $4.5 million on these air tanks that the firefighters wear. They provide firefighters much more oxygen to use, so there isn't the urge for firefighters to take them off. What used to be 30-minute capacity tanks now expanded to 45-minute tanks. And then there's the firehouses themselves. Boston has some of the oldest fire stations in the country. Here in Charlestown, there's been a firehouse in this spot since 1853,
the oldest in Boston and known for blending in among its neighbors around Bunker Hill. It's now under renovation, $3.8 million worth, and many of them are designed to keep firefighters away from any cancer-causing chemicals. But perhaps most groundbreaking is what's happening with the new recruits. Those just sworn in February gave their blood.
So I'm going to place the needle right inside the vein.
Every year, the department will take their blood and analyze it for any possible red flags associated with cancer. Boston is one of the first departments in the country to do this.
There you go, my friend.
But why now? Why all the major changes, one after the next, to help firefighters deal with a problem they faced for years? Commissioner Finn believes the previous mayor, Thomas Menino, dropped the ball.
You have not really hid behind the fact that the previous administration ignored these calls.
Oh, the previous administration ignored all of this.
Why do you think the previous administration didn't do anything about this?
I just don't know. There's probably a lot of reasons. The ongoing conflicts, union conflicts and battles over contracts, I think played a part into it, but you could ignore the facts. The facts were what they were. We could see. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that we had an exorbitant amount of members suffering from cancer and dying from cancer during that past administration, and people didn't want to make the change.
The previous fire commissioner, Roderick Fraser, disputed that, saying, "We did things that should have been done," and that the previous mayor, Thomas Menino, had a deep sense of commitment to the public safety of everyone in the city. But Fraser wouldn't say how involved the mayor was on this issue.
I'm gonna die. And the question I asked him was, when?
In the meantime, the Boston Fire Department has now produced these videos, all very intense, to help educate firefighters on the real-life dangers and hear the stories of those who've battled cancer, some who've lost their battle.
I have kidney cancer.
I have brain cancer. Our members are dying at an exponential rate to occupational cancer.
It's even landed Commissioner Finn in front of audiences across the country, where he's told Boston's story and urging other fire departments to follow his lead.
There's no silver bullet here.
We caught up with Commissioner Finn here in Orlando as he spoke at a conference on cancer and shared the harsh reality of what's happening back home.
In Boston, the biggest challenge we face right now, which is changing, believe me, it's changing moving in the right direction, is the sense of invincibility.
While Commissioner Finn is eager to help the hundreds of firefighters who've been diagnosed, it's also his mission to focus on the future now, before it's too late for hundreds more.
Hopefully this thing plateaus and starts declining. That's the goal, right? But I think the next generation and the changes we make, even the younger generation, the guys who are less than 10 years in the job, we can make a difference in their lives now.
Commissioner Finn largely credits Mayor Marty Walsh for approving the changes here at the Boston Fire Department. I sat down with the mayor and asked him about the difference it's making and if it's enough.
This is an important issue to you.
Absolutely. I mean, these are the men and women that work for me every day, if you will, and they keep us safe and they protect us. And when there's a burning building, they're running into it as other people are running out.
How deep is this for you? Because you have firefighters dying.
Yeah, it's deep because I know the firefighters are dying, and I know some of them. And then when you, now as mayor, regardless of who they are, I know them just because they work for the Boston Fire Department, and I'm the mayor, and it's, you know, me and the commissioner that are the people that, and the head of the union that protect them. And I think that that's something that I take personal.
When the commissioner says that he gets a new diagnosis every 2-3 weeks, what do you think when you hear that?
He'll let me know what's going on, and I think about what we're doing, and it's not being done quick enough, and it certainly wasn't done early enough.
How comfortable are you with what's being done now?
I wouldn't say I'm comfortable. I would say that, you know, we've made a lot of investment, and we're going to continue to make investment.
I told you we spent earlier with a group of firefighters, and we had a really frank conversation with them. And I asked them, do you feel safe now? And they said, we feel safer. Yeah. Is that comforting to you?
No, it's not good enough. I mean, I'm glad they feel safer, but the safer it means that, you know, some of the investments we've made, but they're the ones that end up going to the funerals of the firefighters that pass away. When you see a story on TV with a firefighter and his baby not being able to see him in the hospital, that's a tough story. That's a tough story, and that's for anybody. But when you can put the cause of sickness back to that person's job, which you can't do all the time, that makes it even more difficult.
While cancer's hitting the Boston Fire Department hard, this is an issue that's impacting agencies all across the state and all across the country. You've seen how Boston Fire is responding. In some cases, the firefighter is on his own, but now there's an effort to change that.
Get them to do the right thing and get our firefighters taken care of. So.
Harold Shadeberger is the president of the International Association of Firefighters. He told Boston 25 News the cancer issue impacts too many firefighters across this country. And right now, it's their #1 priority.
We're looking at the science, we're looking at the research. We're talking about changing the culture of firefighters in order to try to keep them healthy, keep them alive longer, to let them enjoy their retirements.
The National Union believes that in 2016, cancer caused 70% of the line-of-duty deaths for career firefighters, a number that has risen over the years.
This is a huge problem statewide.
Rich McKinnon leads the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts. While many fire departments in and around Boston have a second set of gear or washers to clean uniforms after a dangerous fire, only about half of the 220 fire agencies across the state have that. His focus right now, working with lawmakers to make changes. Under current law, if a firefighter is diagnosed with cancer, they have to use their sick time and rely on insurance.
It's a real burden on families. You know, we've had cases where members have used and expanded their whole sick time. We've had members, once their sick time has been exhausted, we had one case in Plymouth where the member exhausted his sick time. He had 7.5 years on the job, had occupational cancer, was fighting that cancer. He ran out of sick time, his pay was cut, was stopped, and his health insurance was canceled.
That firefighter died. Currently, McKinnon is pushing 2 bills through the Massachusetts state legislature. If approved, firefighters diagnosed with cancer would go on injury leave. They wouldn't have to use sick time, and the city's insurance would cover it, although it's not clear how much it would cost.
This legislation would have a huge impact on firefighters and, more importantly, their families. When a firefighter is going through cancer, typically they're the breadwinner. The family doesn't need to worry about where the next paycheck coming in or is their health insurance going to be canceled.
A haunting reality for many families, just struggling to survive in more ways than one.
For many firefighters across this city, their fight goes on. Their love for fighting fires remains, and their passion for saving others will never be replaced with trying to save themselves when it matters most. For Boston 25 News, I'm Blair Miller reporting. Thank you for watching.
For more exclusive behind-the-scenes access to Boston's Bravest, facing a hidden killer, log on to boston25.com/Bravest.